am Samarjeet Kaur of class 10th. I am going to narrate a real but tragic story. This tragic incident gave clues how our personalities and behavior are outcome of the functions of certain specific regions of the brain. Imagine United States of America almost 150 years ago. Phineas Gage was a 25 years old construction foreman of a gang. He was a soft-spoken, dependable fellow. Gage and his men were employed for Rutland and Burlington Railroad project to clear the way for a railway line to run through the mountains in Vermont, United States of America. He must have found his job a blast, literally. And Gage's task was to fill holes drilled in the mountainside with enough explosives to shatter the rocks. After filling the holes with gunpowder, Gage used the pointy end of his metal tamping iron to push a fuse into the gunpowder before the hole was topped up with sand. Gage then tamped down the sand to plug the hole so the blast went in, not out. True, it was a tricky job, but Gage had done this countless times without incident. Until that fateful afternoon of 13 September 1848. As Gage stood over a hole filled with explosives and a fuse, he lost his grip, or maybe he was just distracted. No one knows what was running through his head. It struck granite, created a spark, and set off a brutal explosion. The blast drove the 113 centimeter long, 4 centimeter wide, 6 kilogram tamping rod penetrated through his head, entering under his left cheekbone, then passed through the part of his brain behind his forehead and out the top of his head. Tamping rod fell with a clang, covered in blood and fragments of brain. Unbelievably, Gage was not killed. Instead, he sat up a short time later, rubbed his wound, and asked where his rod went. Gage's gang raced through the smoke to find him knocked flat on his back but conscious. Within moments, he was sitting up and talking. Nonetheless, they rushed him to the hospital as another worker raced to find the town doctor. As he examined the wound, Dr. John Harlow could hardly believe Gage had survived. His skull had shattered, his brain was exposed, yet Gage suffered no loss of speech or movement. Dr. Harlow cleaned the bloody wound, pressed the skull bones back in place, and wrapped a bandage around Gage's head. The following spring, Dr. Harlow examined Gage. Although he looked the same, Gage's personality had changed beyond recognition. He swore insulted friends, and was impossibly selfish. He was an entirely different person. He was no longer the likable, easygoing, well-behaved, respected man and reliable. Instead, he became quarrelsome, bad-tempered, lazy, irresponsible, and an aimless drifter. He was moody, impatient, and obstinate. And he used profane language, which he had never done before. Yet, his basic intelligence and memory were not affected. He lived another 12 years suffering from this personality disorder. Gage's accident had proved that damage to this region, despite its consequences, need not be fatal. And this was the end of this tragic story.
Dr. John Martin Harlow wrote a paper about this bizarre case, and it sparked a worldwide wave of interest.
The equilibrium or balance, as to speak, between his intellectual faculties and animal propensities seems to have been destroyed. He is fitful, irreverent, indulging at times in the grossest profundity which was not previously his customs, manifesting but little deference for his fellows, and impatient of restraint or advice when it conflicts with his desires. A child in his intellectual capacity and manifestations, he has the animal passions of a strong man. Previous to his injury, although untrained in the schools, he possessed a well-balanced mind and was looked upon by those who knew him as a shrewd, smart businessman, very energetic and persistent in execution of all his plans of operation. In this regard, his mind was radically changed, so decidedly that his friends and acquaintances said he was no longer Gage.
This famous case was an important milestone in the history of medical sciences. It was because it suggested that the key parts of the personality resided in the frontal lobe. And this gave a clue.
आपने जो मुझे पुस्तक दी वो बहुत अच्छी थी. उसमें विचित्र
That
प्रकार
brain
के
does more than control
बोलते हैं,
movements,
मैं पूरी
speech,
कोशिश कर रही हूँ
and
कि मेरा
language.
भाव प्रकट हो.
Almost a century later, in 1994, using 3D computer-generated images, scientists reconstructed the cause of this bizarre behavior following massive brain injury. In the years following this accident, neuroscientists began to develop a functional map of the brain that identified which parts of the brain controlled which specific functions of the body.
Ultimately, we are what we are because of our brain.